Good evening and welcome to our third budget meeting this Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. Before we start, I will remind Council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I will also remind Council to speak clearly and project their voice when they are talking so people viewing at home can hear. And I will do a roll call for the benefit of the public watching. When I call your name, please wave at the camera and say here or present. I, Mayor Shantz, am here and present. I am here and present and chairing the meeting. Councillor Martin.
Here.
Councillor McMillan.
Here.
Councillor Carlahan.
Present.
Councillor Redekop.
Here.
And Councillor Shantz.
Here.
All right, let's start with reconvening to open session, moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Redekop. All those in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, a motion that Council convenes into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by someone. Councillor Martin, all those in favor? That's carried.
Mayor Shantz,
Yes.
I missed the pecuniary interest. I just noticed with the grants in kind 5.1.3.1, the Three Sisters is a client, so I'm going to declare on that one.
Okay. Thank you. I thought they were under 3. Yeah. Okay. Well, when we do them, we'll let you off. How's that?
Okay.
Okay. So tonight we have the CAO, Financial Services, Corporate Services, IT, and Council. Now I have the Three Sisters down under Corporate Services. Val tells me that's correct. And Ms. Carter is here from the Three Sisters, so if at Council's indulgence, we could do that first, and then she would be free to go if she wanted to. Everybody okay with that? Okay, we'll start with Corporate Services, and then we'll move to the CAO. Corporate Services would be Ms. Hummel.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Do you want to do the entire Corporate Services department, including this grant request, or just the grant request alone, and then let her go?
We can do it either. Let's do the whole. Let's just do Corporate Services and get through them.
Okay. I'll introduce Ms. Carter. Thank you. Adrian Carter of the Three Sisters Cultural Center is with us to speak to Council about her request for a grant in kind in the amount of $7,000 for site plan review and building permit fees that she paid in December. The request meets the requirements of the Township's community grants policy and can be considered by Council within the full context of the full grants operating budget for 2021. I have nothing further to add at this time, Mayor Shantz.
Okay. Ms. Adrian Carter is here. You can put your, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to thank you, Madam Mayor, and the council members for giving me the opportunity to come before you this evening to share with you my vision for cultural development in our community. My sister, Jax Rula, and I want to create a supportive environment in which local artisans and creative industry can thrive in Woolwich by fostering collaborative initiatives through by fostering collaborative initiatives through mutually beneficial partnerships. And we were so elated when we were given the opportunity to secure the old Tolman Tire Garage in the heart of St. Jacobs to fulfill that dream. And we have been warmly welcomed to the community by residents, local businesses, and municipal staff. I never realized when we put up the signs in the windows to announce the coming of the Three Sisters Center, how much of a positive response we were going to get from everyone. They were all so excited that a dynamic and engaging cultural center was coming to the township. And the concept inspires hope in people. It is something to look forward to in these dark times. Even the Creative Cities Network of Canada pointed out today that the arts emerged as a lifeline of joy, hope, and reprieve so desperately needed to make it through the pandemic. And each person I have spoken to about the center relates to a different aspect of the proposed activities. The recording studios for local podcast producers, exhibition opportunities for young artists, a small event space for corporate functions, and a tasting house to host intimate gatherings. Whatever it may be, people find inspiration, and I see their eyes light up with excitement at the thought of all the possibilities. And so when I last came before this council, I spoke about what we want our community to look like after COVID. Will it be a place that is barely surviving, or a place that rebounded quickly and is now thriving? Ed from Eco Cafe recognizes that a prosperous tourism destination, such as St. Jacobs, needs to continually build upon the various experiences that visitors can engage in when they come, and to give them reasons to return. Like so many small businesses, Ed is thinking about how our community will get past the current situation and what it will look like on the other side. And similar to the other local businesses we have developed partnerships with, and I believe you have some letters of some support that I submitted, Ed recognizes that a cultural center, and specifically the tasting house, can provide a gateway for people to explore the area and visit other businesses who may not be on the beaten path. The tasting house will be a visitor center of sorts for these local businesses. People will be able to sample and purchase items from local producers that will then inspire them to go to the businesses to see their full line of products for themselves. So beyond supporting local artists by providing affordable studio, recording, and exhibit space for them to sell, make, and share their creations, the center will sell the work of the other local artists and provide an event space where a variety of community activities, workshops, and celebrations can happen that are inclusive and dynamic. Once up and running, the Cultural Center will be in an excellent position to answer the Honorable Karen Redmond's call to fill a void in the region for an organization that coordinates cultural opportunities. Managing public art projects, supporting special events, and working on destination development will benefit the entire township and will be a large part of the work my sister and I will do at the center. I have a decade of experience in partnership building, destination development, and cultural tourism. And Jax, who has been an active artist in this community for over 30 years and ran the Art District Gallery, which was in St. Jacobs for a while, has a well-established network of local artists to call upon for a variety of projects, events, and exhibitions. And we have already started this work by participating on the Elmira Public Art Committee, and we are active members in the St. Jacobs BIA. So I want to really stress that our mandate for this cultural center is to support local artists and businesses. First and foremost, the tasting house will feature local craft producers from the township. And as we start to engage with artists to take studios in the center, we again will start with those in the township. I see this initiative as having a ripple effect where it benefits those closest to the center the most, including the residents, and then casting its influence further into the township and region. So as we launch into our capital fundraising efforts to make the center a reality this year, I look to the township to take the lead in supporting this endeavor by providing grant funds to assist with the initial planning, development, and renovations. It is important when I apply for provincial, federal, and private funding support that I can say the township backs this initiative. And this is a lot more meaningful when actual funds are invested rather than just a letter of support. This support will see the tasting house open for business in the spring in time for returning visitors and residents to learn all about the local craft beverages, foods, and preserves that are made in Woolwich. And we are then planning to open the center, the main center with the studios, in the fall this year, just when the government anticipates everyone will have a COVID vaccine. So here's hoping. The sustainable growth and recovery from the impacts of the pandemic will take partnerships and ongoing collaborations among local businesses to succeed. And our creative industries complex is designed to support economic development through cooperative efforts with local artists and businesses. The beneficiaries of this initiative will certainly be the village, the township, and the region. Communities that support creative initiatives are viewed as being better places to live and work. Community interaction becomes stronger, and people develop a strong positive pride of place. And so I respectfully request support from the township to help us launch our capital campaign and to see culture and businesses thrive in our community for years to come. So thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for your time this evening.
Thank you. Are there questions, council? Okay, do we know what your ask is in the amount? Did I miss that? Or-
It's 7,000.
Thank you. Councillor Shantz, and then Councillor McMillan, was your hand up? Okay, Councillor Shantz, and then maybe Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, am I getting this wrong, or was this not a grant request at one point and then got pulled off of the grant request, and now is it back on? Is that the way I'm understanding this?
Not for me. I had always intended to put in a grant ask. I know I had conversations with municipal staff about the structure and the kind of grant, but it was always my intent to submit a grant application.
Ms. Hummel?
Thank you, Mayor. I can clarify that we at one point had a recommendation to council that we weren't going to open the grants process for 2021. The direction came back that we were, but that night was the night that Ms. Carter spoke to you, just about opening the process.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, and then I thought we opened the process, and then we were told that there was not a grant coming forward or a request coming forward from the Three Sisters, or am I wrong?
No, it was always my intent to submit a grant application.
Okay, I apologize. I was mistaken then. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm on board with Councillor Shantz. We did hear that.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, so this is a grant in kind. It is not a grant that falls under your grant's budget, if that clarifies things.
This is a grant in kind.
So again, through you, Madam Mayor, it is a grant in kind. It is a separate part of the grant's policy, and it does not show up in your grant's budget. So technically, a grant in kind can come forward at any time in the year. It isn't typically part of our grants application process. It can come forward at any time.
And what is the in kind?
Would you like me to answer that?
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Carter.
So when I was speaking with staff members about how to approach this grant application, I felt that it might be a better route to ask for money that would cover site plan, permits, building permits, that kind of thing. So it is essentially money that I need to pay I have paid the township for the building, the permit process. So in that sense, it's an in-kind grant because the money went back to the township in the end anyway.
Understood, thank you. Other questions? No? I'm not seeing any, so we should probably let Jeff go through the grant recommendations, and then we can decide how to fit this in.
Or you could hold it till Thursday night as well, this one specifically, when you deal with the overall budget.
Okay, did everybody hear that? We can hold all of the grant recommendations until Thursday, or we can deal with them tonight. But I'll let Mr. Smith. Yeah.
To Madam Mayor, there's a question from Council.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor McMillan, did you say? I missed it. Larry? Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. Through you to Richard. So if this is a grant in kind, where would that where would those dollars come from? Would it be out of the building department?
So through you, Madam Mayor, this one is a bit awkward, and I'm going to say it's a little bit awkward because we're straddling 2 different years. So the fees were received in 2020, but we're dealing with potentially rebating those fees back in 2021. So this is where it gets a little bit awkward. It can be achieved. It's just a bit of legal accounting finagling, but it's legal. But we can make it work. It's just a matter of, I think from 2020, we would just put some of these monies into like the reserve, and then we just pull it in 2021 so that it's in 2021.
Okay. Anyone else? Did I miss this? Scott? No, you're good. Okay.
No, actually, it was Ms. Carter answered my half and half question about all of the money going back. The in-kind conversation covered that off.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Carter. I think from here we'll have a discussion, and if you can hang around until we're done, and you'll know what we've decided.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. This is report CO1 2021 in your package. I'll just remind Council that we did open the grant application process, but in terms of the grant's budget, not including the application you just heard, but there were no further grants received for the grant's budget. As requested, staff asked pre-approved groups the impact that COVID-19 had on their organizations and how they were operating, and this report goes through that. In terms of the recommendation that we came forward with, there are really 2 principles that are informing that. The first is that...
Should Patrick be brought back?
Yes, thank you. Come on back. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, sorry, as I was saying, there were 2 principles that I came to when I was writing this report with Alex, our council committee facilitator. The first was to continue with inflationary increases for all pre-approved groups. You'll notice in the report that some groups said they could likely go 1 year without a inflationary increase, while others said it would negatively impact their operations. This report has treated all those groups the same. Although council can make a decision to provide the inflationary increase or not. And the second was to allow groups to carry forward unused grant amounts into 2021 that weren't used in 2020. So I'll just draw your attention to the page that Alex has just put up on the screen for you. It's page 55 of your agenda package this evening. And really there's 2 options there. Option 1 is what staff are recommending. So as I said, it does include the inflationary increases for the groups that have already been pre-approved. And it includes the amounts that all the groups were pre-approved for, less any money that was unspent in 2020, allowing those groups to carry it forward into 2021. Option 2 provides no inflationary increases that would result in a savings of about $629. However, I would mention that Community Care Concepts of Woolwich did note that that would negatively impact their programs and services for this coming year. As a third option, of course, council can provide any other grant amount they deem appropriate. There's 2 other parts to this report that I'd like to draw council's attention to. The first is the miscellaneous, including travel and special assistance grants. That has typically been $1,500 included in the budget. I'll just advise council that in part because of COVID, only $875 of that was awarded in 2020. So if council needed to, that miscellaneous grants budget could probably be reduced slightly. And then finally, as we were going through this, the policy or the grant process this year, we are recommending some updates to the grant policy. So those are listed in the report. And as I mentioned, thank you, Alex, you probably don't have to display that any longer. As I mentioned, the recommendation is to update the grants policy as provided in the report and include option 1 in the financial implication section, which is providing the inflationary increase for all groups and allowing groups that did not spend their 2020 grant amount to carry that forward into 2021. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Council? Councilor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. I'm not sure if this question can be answered, if we want to answer it later with Councilor Merlehan if he steps out, but is the reason why the Three Sisters is not included in the original recommendation have to do with that in kind, what you talked about having a different budget? So can we maybe ask you later, when Councilor Merlehan's not in the room, can we talk about behind his back, just if staff has a recommendation on that? If he left, does staff have a recommendation on that? And would that be coming to council at a later time, or are they prepared to recommend as part of this whole thing?
Just for process, and then we'll deal with these, and then we'll go back to the Three Sisters, but just clarify the process for us, please.
I've been handling the Three Sisters grant up until now. It's not a common request, these grant in kinds. I think this is the first one that I remember being involved with. There's no common approach. It's a new grant, and after my involvement in dealing with a difficult budget, I would have a hard time recommending for it. But then again, I don't want to recommend against it either. I think it has to be, you have to look at it in the context of your overall budget and see if you can fit it in.
But this would be coming out of planning.
Yes. Yeah,
So
it's not
it's
out of the grants budget. It is.
And it's not a levy.
No.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and with that answered, I'd be prepared to move the recommendation for option 1.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councilor Shantz, any further discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we should deal with the Three Sisters as well, I think, and give her answer so she knows what she has to plan for. Councilor Shantz, and then McMillan, and then Martin.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Jenna has had an opportunity to weigh in on this, being the tourism person, and what that thought is.
Mr. Brown, can you answer for Jenna? You're muted.
Mayor, it should be Mark Pomponi. Jenna reports to Mark. So I'll let Mark speak to what him and Jenna might have been speaking about.
My apologies. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly we've had conversations about this. I'd say from an economic development perspective, there's absolutely support for this, for the request. There's been some parallels to other municipalities who have had similar things going on, where these types of uses are pretty supportive of a downtown core. So from an economic development perspective, yeah, she is supportive of this, and for sure.
And so, Mark, while you're there, so this would come out of your budget?
Yes, it would.
And so do you support, where do you stand?
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's if you look at it purely from a planning perspective, and I've been very consistent throughout my career, is that the planning fees are put in place to recover costs for services that are provided. This is not a huge amount of money. I'd say it's $7,000. It's not a huge amount. I'd say when we go through our budgeting process, it would be difficult for us to be accurate within this amount of money regardless. An application comes in or doesn't come in. So I'd say it's within, it's not going to really harm that if it turns out that the grant is approved by council, it's not going to be a huge hit for us. As a principle, we certainly are of the opinion, as I said earlier, is that we put the fees in place, and the reason they're put in place is to recoup costs for that service. And I've never been supportive of it from a planning perspective.
Thank you. I think it was Councillor McMillan and then Martin. You're done, Councillor Martin?
I'm not sure what this means.
The other way around, Councillor Martin had his hand up first.
Okay, Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Okay. The problem I have with this is that here we are picking and choosing what we're going to support. I'll give you a little background. Probably a year and a half ago, at that time, churches, private schools were exempt from development charges. You guys all voted to take that away from them, and the argument was that everybody needs to pay their way. So here we are, when it comes to this, and it looks half decent, now we're going to say we're going to support it. And that doesn't make any sense to me. It's either one way or the other. And I'll say one other thing, since Patrick's not here. I'm not sure why he's got a pecuniary interest. Somebody help me with this that understands it better. Because when this discussion came up a month or two ago, he's the one that put the motion forward to deal with it this way. Did he not have a pecuniary interest at that point? Who can help me with that?
I think needs to decide in any given instance whether it's a pecuniary interest or not. So that would have been Councillor Moynihan's decision at that time. I can't speak for his reasons.
If I can say something, I don't really have to justify it to Councillor Martin, but at the time I wasn't aware that I had a pecuniary interest, and it's only been a client in the last little while shortly after that, as far as I'm aware. So anyway, I'm declaring now I've got nothing in this.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you, I would support us helping the Three Sisters. I think that the economic benefit that it provides for our local businesses is worth it. I think investing in art and our downtowns is important. I think that's a really great building to turn from a tire shop into a cultural center. I think it'll help the downtown. I think it'll help businesses that they work with. I am cognizant of the fact that this might not be a precedent that we want to set. So if we wanted to, add to our grant budget and give them a $7,000 grant that, they are free to use whichever way, I'd be open to that as well. If council would prefer to do it that way, as opposed to a grant in kind. I think that Councillor Martin makes a good point that we stopped with the exclusion of grants for churches and parochial schools. I think for me, the difference would be that I think the government does belong in the business of promoting art, promoting activity, promoting sports and entertainment, and I don't know if we belong in the realm of religion. And that's what my vote was for on that one, and why I would vote differently this time. But if staff and council decided it was easier to do it as a grant and add $7,000 to our grant budget and have it come off the levy, I would support that as well. I do think that this is a worthwhile investment for us.
Councillor Redikoff and then Martin.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of this grant in kind to Three Sisters. I think it's important for the community in St. Jacobs. They don't have a clearinghouse like this. They don't have an information center, and I think this can play that role, as well as to promote the various arts that we have in Woolwich Township. And I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a precedent. I mean, we're always changing our mind anyway. So I'm in favor of providing Three Sisters with this grant in kind.
Okay. Any other, Marie, did you have another?
Yeah, just another comment. If we support it, let's make sure they have washrooms. Like that when I talk about picking and choosing, we have a gentleman that spent several $1 million in a new business in my town. And I know he went through a minor variance to get a sign where he wanted it. He paid a permit to get a sign. What did we do to help him? Did we do anything at all to tell him, thank you for your investment in our community? No, the answer is no. We didn't give him a thing. That's where I've got a problem when we pick and choose and what we're going to do.
Okay, anyone else? So we've put out a couple options. Councillor McMillan, go ahead. Or
Well,
Councillor-
if Councillor Redekop were ready to move that we do the grant in kind, I would second that. If he's not prepared to, are you moving that, Councillor Redekop?
Yeah, I'm prepared to move it. Yeah,
I'll
I'm
second
prepared.
that then.
Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Cup, seconded by Councillor McMillan, that we approve the $7,000 as a grant in kind for the Three Sisters. Councillor Shantz, did you have another comment? No? Okay, Councillor Martin.
Just a quick question. Is this a one-time deal?
Yes, it would be because it's fees. I'm assuming, looking at the mover and the seconder, this is a one-time deal.
So it shouldn't come in under our grants. Because if it does, it'll show up there next year again.
Okay. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? The vote lost on a tie. So that is turned down. Unless anyone wants to make another motion. Councillor McMillan?
I would move that we add it to our grants budget then and deliver it as a grant. I think we've had one-off applications for grants in the past, haven't we? So if our problem is setting a precedent or doing it through fees, I would do a one-time grant. If our staff thinks that that's, I mean, our staff decided to bring it to us in the fee in kind route. If they think it's possible that we go through the regular grant, I would move that. If there's a seconder, we can maybe ask staff through that process. So I'll move that we add it to the grant budget and do a one-time grant.
Okay, Councillor Redekop, are you seconding that?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Shantz?
Can you clarify point of order? Because I thought if it was a tie that the mayor would break the tie.
If it's a recorded vote, I believe, but let me check. We'll get Val to check that.
If we don't have a bylaw, the Roberts rules says it's defeated on a tie. The mayor can vote on the tie, but isn't required to vote. We might have bylaws that supersede that, but the mayor can choose not to vote.
So in your procedural bylaw, under section 102B, it says, when a motion is put forward, every member present shall vote unless such member is the presiding officer, in which case the member shall only vote if a recorded vote is requested or if there's a tie vote. Oh, so it is then.
So do we back up?
You can, with the motion that's on the floor, if you go ahead with that motion, it takes the same effect. It's whether it's grant in kind or whether it's in the grants budget.
It's different where it comes from.
It's different where.
So the grant find, can we go back to that?
If you want to try and reconsider it, I think it gets very complicated.
Don't you have the opportunity to abstain from a vote as well? Couldn't we just say the mayor abstained?
Well, I don't have to vote. So at this point, that motion stands as defeated. I think.
If-
We can't can we back it up?
It's procedurally great, but I don't think at the end of the day, anyone's gonna die from it. You know what you wanna do. So.
Councillor Shantz and then Martin.
I was giving you a second chance. I'm not particularly interested in putting it into the grant fund neither. I think that to me, I agree with Councillor Martin. All of a sudden it's there and then it'll be presumed that it's going to be there for a long time. So I guess that's I have a problem with that one.
Councillor Martin, did you have something else to add?
Well, since I was defeated, I was thinking of a new motion, whenever that could come up,
I think there is a new motion on the floor
which was,
to take it out of the grant fund, grant budget.
to take it out and put it in.
What to add it to the grant budget.
One time.
No, I won't support that.
Okay, so I'm gonna, all right. There's a motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that one is lost. I would have supported it the other way.
Okay. What you could do, Mayor, is go think about it for 2 days, and if you want to do a motion of reconsideration on Thursday, you can do that too. So we'll have to go back and figure it out.
Okay. Marty, did you have another motion you wanted to put?
Well, I was gonna put a motion that would give them $2,500, and most of that can be recovered because cycling in the future, we're not giving them any money this year. School safety patrol, we're not giving them any money. I'm not sure what the totals would be there, but there's 2 places where we're not getting the money. I thought there was a third. We've got 3 areas here where there's unused money, 4 areas in fact. But 2 areas where they haven't used any. And I would have used some of that money and given them a small amount.
Are you making that a
Well, I
motion?
would put a motion on, they would give them $2,500.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor McMillan? Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, Ms. Carter, you're still here, yeah. So we will grant you $2,500 then towards your work.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's finish off corporate services then and move on to.
Mayor Sean, sorry, Mr. Petherick has his hand up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, adding $2,500 to the current grants budget, which would increase that grants budget area. That was the motion that was passed by council. I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you guys.
I believe that was your intent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that means your grants budget is now increased to $45,656. Okay. Okay.
It was $2,500 grant.
Yeah, but the grants budget before, the whole entire grant budget area was $43,156. That's what the report you saw. So when you add the 2,500, that's where I got up to the 56 or 46,656.
My page says 4656. Okay.
That's option 2, Madam Mayor. We moved option 1, which was above that.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So I will the floor over to Ms. Hummel for the rest of the corporate services then.
Thank you, Mayor Sean. I was the same with you in that recommendation, so we're alone. Thank you. With your indulgence, I'm going to give a brief overview of the department and its divisions, mostly for the viewing public, because this video could be on YouTube for eternity. Then talk a little bit about the pandemic before we proceed through our departmental PowerPoint. Corporate services consists of 4 divisions. The Clerks Division, supporting council and legislative services, enforcement services, human resources, and IT services. The Clerks Division facilitates council and committees of council and handles other duties such as lottery and mobile vendor licensing, marriage licenses, death registrations, legislative records management, and corporate communications. And preparation for the municipal election in 2022 is already ramping up. The Enforcement Services Division has 2 officers responding to complaints under many bylaws from a population of around 26,000 people spread out over a large area. In addition, this division handles the administrative demands of parking tickets, dog tags, and the crossing guard program. Human Resources, the position of Human Resources Generalist was added to the Corporate Services Department as a result of the 2019 organizational review, which council is aware of, and is responsible for supporting staff and management through the entire life cycle of an employee, from recruitment to retirement. I'm pretty sure I speak for the other members of the senior management team when I say I cannot imagine having to deal with the staff impacts during the pandemic without the support of that position. The IT Services Division handles all aspects of the corporation's IT needs, from cell and desk phones to the website, from desktops and laptops to software and server maintenance. It's on them to ensure that 225 part-time, full-time, and contract staff, plus 165 volunteer firefighters can communicate and operate. This division functions with 2 full-time staff positions plus 1 contract position, which ends in a few months, and we are asking council to extend that with modifications for a 3-year period. Quite simply, the IT needs of the corporation have grown beyond the capacity of 2 people. I am asking for your support in ensuring IT services is appropriately resourced by supporting that contract extension. Moving now briefly, corporate services staff, like everyone else, was deeply impacted when the pandemic hit last year. Our department never slowed down as we transitioned into a pandemic way of being. For example, the IT division pulled together to rapidly move council meetings to a video conference platform, ensuring council could continue its work safely. That was with Clerks Division as well. IT also helped multiple staff transition to work from home. Plus, the visibility of our enforcement officers provided community stability and support as they patrolled our communities and continued to respond to complaints. The visibility was appreciated. People actually started waving at our officers as they drove by, and still do to this day, unless you're on the receiving end of the visit, then people tend not to wave. And HR supported staff through everything, including those staff who had to be laid off. Corporate services oversaw emergency communications and organized information for the community, and participated in coordinated regional efforts in the areas of human resources, communications, and enforcement. Staff still managed to push through on some major projects and always handled themselves commendably and without complaint. I applaud corporate services staff, crossing guards, and all other township staff for getting through 2020 almost in one piece, and I commend all departments for working together so well during what feels like an unrelenting emergency. It's been a long year for staff, but the support of council made it bearable, and thank you for that. Deputy Clerk Jeff Smith and Manager of IT Services Barry Girth and I are now going to finish the rest of our PowerPoint presentation to give you a visual of the corporate services operating and capital budgets.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Through you, Madam Mayor. I'll just ask Alex to switch to the 3rd slide, which I believe is the Clerks Division highlights. Here we go. So in terms of the Clerks Division, we are recommending one service enhancement. That's $16,000 for accessible document remediation to comply with the 2021 AODA deadline. And we're recommending that that be funded from the Modernization and Efficiency Fund. The other 2 major changes to the Clerks Division are the municipal drain transfer to infrastructure services, for the 2019 organizational review that Jared Capay, Director of Infrastructure Services, already talked to you about 2 meetings ago. The other major change is that the Elmira BIA has hired the road admin support, so you'll see that reflected in the budget. I'll just mention on the municipal drain transfer that this will allow staff to refocus on core duties of the clerk's office. For the next 2 years, I hate to mention it, but that means municipal elections. Also, in the clerk's purview is grants. So that budget will come in as approved tonight. You've already discussed that. And then we also look over the administrative overhead budget. There's no major changes to that budget, except as Richard, the treasurer, has already mentioned, the reduction in the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, OMPF grant, that has been reduced. And over to Val.
Next slide, please. Enforcement Division. So under the proposed budget, we are proposing to continue to operate with 2 enforcement officers. Complaints have been slowly trending upwards since 2017, and pressure is increasing for regular evening and weekend patrols. I don't have any plans for regular patrols, although they are happening randomly. Our township has had 2 officers since 2005, yet our township looks very different now than it did then, with a lot of new development. Also, our officers have made me aware that the higher density of apartment living means a higher on average number of complaints for that space. So every new apartment building has its own set of challenges for enforcement. In future budget years, we will have to start thinking about adding to the enforcement complement to stay on top of community requests, but that request is not in front of you this budget year. We are recommending 1 service enhancement in this division. This division is highly technical in nature. The implementation of a professional services agreement will support our enforcement officers and reduce the need to rely on the township solicitor for guidance. We have covered the cost of this agreement by reducing our legal budget, and the net levy impact is only $250. Also, we officially only have 1 enforcement truck for 2 officers, which has never been perfect, but we've made do until the pandemic hit, and then it became difficult. We were lucky enough to temporarily borrow a truck from our friends in Recreation and Community Services Department for a few months, but had to give it back when the summer students returned. We now have it for the winter. At some point in the future, with the amount of new development and how much travel they are doing, it will be strategic to consider a 2nd truck for this division at some point again in the future. There was a slight increase in kennel fees, which was previously approved by council, that we've added to the budget, and the crossing guard budget is status quo with no service enhancements. Thank you. Next slide.
In terms of the Human Resources Division, as Val mentioned, this was brought under the Corporate Services Department this year, and we have started our first HR generalist position. That's gone very, very well. In terms of service enhancements for this division, we're looking at a change to the Manulife Employee and Family Assistance Program for enhanced mental health support for our employees and their families. The net cost for that is $4,000. And there are no other major changes to this division. Next slide, please. In terms of the IT division, there are no major service enhancements. The major change that we're going to talk about is change to the IT help desk technician. That was the 2-year contract that's expiring this year. We're recommending that that be modified into an IT systems administrator as a 3-year contract position. The salary for that is the same. That's really to flush out and enhance or and evolve the services provided by the IT department. There has been an increase in staffing request form provided in your full budget package. That position is still planned to provide 2nd level help desk support, but with more of a focus on server and administration work for the IT department. And as Val mentioned, this position is needed to manage our systems, provide backup and redundancies, and support IT projects that are coming in from other departments. The other thing I'd like to talk about in terms of budget pressures on the IT division is subscription-based services are are really what's driving our costs in software maintenance. So partly what we've done to help council better understand that is we've broken that down into 4 new categories in the budget. So we've broken it into corporate enterprise software, licenses that are specific for staff software like Microsoft Office, infrastructure and security services. So those are things like our networking and security monitoring, and then the website. So we're hoping that leads to a better understanding of how those costs are coming to council. And with that, I'll ask Alex to switch to the next slide, and Barry Girth, the manager of IT, will talk to you about the IT capital budget.
Thank you, Jeff. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity on kind of what we're including in the IT capital budget. So one of the things that you will see is finance copier replacement. That was originally purchased in 2014 and is now experiences frequent printing outages causing productivity issues for staff. So that is something that we are planning to do to replace this year. Server infrastructure, this was originally scheduled as a $75,000 production server environment replacement. I changed this plan instead to perform server enhancements and to obtain warranty extensions. So this would defer the replacement of those pieces of equipment to a future year. For PC replacements, again, this was originally scheduled as a $40,000 project to replace 25 computers. And in consultation with the affected departments, I made adjustments to the number of computers scheduled for replacement for 2021 to reduce the amount to a $21,000 project to replace 10 computers and defer the remaining to 2022. The server infrastructure and PC replacement changes were made in an effort to ease the budget burden for 2021 and to realize additional years of service for healthy equipment while there is still vendor support available. $8,000 of the $69,000 that is in that budget line is planned to be transferred to the reserve fund. In addition to these recurring projects, the day-to-day support tasks, after hours, server infrastructure maintenance tasks, and currently any pandemic-related requests, IT Services has been presented a list of 21 projects for 2021 from other departments, which range from investigative tasks, purchase and deployment of new equipment, enterprise software upgrades, the council chambers upgrades, and facility renovations, just to name a few. Funding for most of these projects are either from the requesting department's budget or the modernization and efficiency funding. And that is all I have to say on that one.
Thank you, Barry. Just to round things up, I wanted to mention a couple of the modernization and efficiency funding projects that we're excited about. So council should already be aware of the council chambers upgrade. We're very excited about that to really modernize our chambers and allow us to continue holding these in-person meetings with a lot better hardware. Website accessibility, so I mentioned that in the clerk's budget. That's to comply with our AODA deadlines. And this is a great way to use the modernization and efficiency fund to help us get where we need to be in terms of website accessibility. We've already deployed a parking ticket software package, so that will upgrade our parking ticket ability. We're hoping in the next few weeks that we'll be able to launch online payments for that system. We're getting a lot of requests for that even before the pandemic, and then since our office is closed, having that option, that payment option, I think will be very helpful. Going forward, we've asked for money from the Modernization and Efficiency Fund to purchase parking ticket hardware, so our officers will be able to issue tickets in the field with mobile printing devices. So that's a big upgrade for the bylaw department. Right now, we have a small team at the township looking at an app or web upgrade that would improve services to customers. So that's something we're looking at, and we'll be hopefully coming forward with a recommendation shortly. And then the other project for modernization and efficiency funding is the computer switch and battery backup. So that will enhance our server environment. And Mr. Girth is probably the best person to answer questions on that. So that's the last slide we have. With that, Val, Barry, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Council, questions? Councilor Merlan, and then Shawns.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Girth. Last year we talked about expected life of just regular computers. Can you tell me what is the expected life on the servers? I feel like we have a new server every year or something. It just seems like a lot. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, a lot of it is tied to how long vendors support it. When vendors start to list things as end of sale, end of life, end of support, it becomes harder and harder to find parts for it. It becomes harder and harder to get support and even get patches for newly discovered vulnerabilities for these pieces of equipment. Historically, we've been replacing things on a 5-year cycle. With the extended warranties, I'm looking to extend that out to 8 years. Beyond that, it gets really problematic or challenging to maintain and ensure the health of those systems, because the security and operational risk starts to increase. In addition, with changes in technology being so fast and demands of new software and updates in software, oftentimes there are system requirements that we need to maintain as well. So this is why we do start to replace things before, sometimes you feel that you're replacing them sooner than later, but it is to maintain and to keep pace with changes in industry and in software development as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Shawns.
Thank you, through you to Barry as well. Can you just highlight what's going to happen with the AV equipment in the council chambers? I know we kind of went through that fairly quickly when it was presented. And what's all happening there? We're getting involved in the sound equipment that is in-house, but also sound equipment when we're doing these meetings. Is that going to be more direct, that each council member that is in there will have their own microphone that'll work through the system? Or are we still going to have this central mic that gives us all kinds of feedback and noise?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Shantz. Yes, the intention is, and the design has been created so that each councillor or each attendee in person will have their own mic, and that will route through the system as well as to any live streaming or recording system that is being built into the solution. So yes, every station will have a gooseneck mic for council or staff or delegates to use, and that will all be routed to a central processing unit and to the device that is live streaming. So it's a consistent and as clear as we can make it audio signal as well as video signal for the recordings and the now standard of video broadcast.
Go ahead.
And what about the camera then? Is it going to be a camera, like a live streaming camera, or are we still going to be working off the computers?
The design is including 2 cameras. One is going to be they'll generally be wide shots. So one camera will be facing kind of behind where the delegate stands and shooting or showing the staff and council and the chair locations. Another one will be positioned behind the mayor pointing out towards the delegation so that we can switch between the two as needed.
Thank you. And if I may have one more question, and I think this probably is for Jeff or Val. In your part-time salaries for the additional overnight snow events, is that another person, or is that just somebody that is on staff that is taking night call and night shift instead of daytime?
I can answer that one. Through you to Councillor Shantz, that is another person that we are going to onboard and have do the snow event and the overnight parking from now until March, training them up and preparing them for next winter too, because our regular enforcement officers who are here have very limited life. They have kids and stuff, so it's really hard for them to go out and do the overnights sometimes and get the kids to childcare. So I'm bringing somebody on board to train them now this winter and get them ready hopefully for next winter too. Go ahead.
So last year, I thought we passed the motion that the plow operators could ticket. And what would be the difference between this person and a plow operator throwing a ticket on the windshield?
Through Mayor Shantz, the plow operators have decided not to get reappointed this year. So we have Carter with three staff members from operations who will ticket when they can. This person is going to provide more routine enforcement of the overnight parking ban because it is my department, is corporate services responsibility to enforce the overnight parking ban more so than operations. So they'll do it when they can, but we are more responsible for it.
Councillor Redekop, I think I saw your hand before. And then
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Petherick. On the first page of the corporate services functional summary, there's a red number. Can you explain that number?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So that number is a negative, so that means it is subtracting from something. So in this context, that red 67,800 is the reduction in OMPF funding we're going to see in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
I think Councillor McMillan was next.
Yeah, just a follow up to what Clerk Hummel was talking about with the plow operators not asking to do that again. Did they just find that it was too hard to dismount from the plow and then get back in, and it was just taking too much time?
Correct. It's once the plows get going, it's not a good thing to, I mean, Councillor Martin can probably speak to this too. It's not a good thing to stop and issue a ticket. They'll never get through their routes. We need, and there's enough cars that it's too much for the plow operators to handle. We need somebody separate.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Martin?
Just to follow up on that, as a plow operator, we used to call ahead and tell our ticket people where there was a problem if we had trouble getting through. And then a question to Val, is this person also going to work weekends?
Through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Martin, yes, this person will do a random evening and weekend shift between 4 a.m. and we don't go to 9 a.m. usually unless it's severe weather, but there's no guarantees of that. So it will be random, including weekends.
Okay. Councillor Vermeyen?
Yeah, through you to Val. I was just looking at a few areas that maybe we could shave a little bit to make up for some of the grant that was added. Under the travel assistance, we kind of have it back as a regular year. I'm wondering if we can just shave that down to $500 and take $1,000 from that. And then the other spot I was looking at was under bylaw enforcement. The fuel was kind of budgeted as a regular year, and under that, I don't think any year has even come close to the 3,000 that's there. So I'm wondering if we can. So other years it was about 1,400, 1,200. There's been budgeted of 2,500, and then it's gone up to 3,000 this year. So last year was about 946. So even if we shaved, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 off of that, you'd make up your 2,500 that was added to the grants just to keep everything copacetic.
Mayor Shantz, I would prefer no more than 1,000 come off that account, just because I don't want enforcement's activities regulated by their monitoring their fuel budget. If they have to go, they have to go. So you can take 1,500 off. If they go over, I can't. There's no guarantees, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I understand the desire to have a balanced, neutral increase on the grants. I don't agree with pulling it out of the clerk's budget, out of corporate services. I think Councilor Martin had mentioned there were a few grants that weren't receiving grants. They were at $0 this year. And I think that if we want to make a statement as a council that we want to invest in art, then we should invest in art and not do it on the back of our corporate service budget. If the budget needs to be reduced because it's not budgeted properly, let's do it for that reason rather than because we decided to invest in art.
Okay, Councilor Merlihan?
Through you, just to back it up, I was going to raise that regardless of adding to the grant budget. So that was in my notes. So.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? So there's a suggestion that we reduce the bylaw fuel line. What is the rest of council? How does the rest of the council feel about that? Thumbs up, thumbs down, comment. Larry?
Yeah, I think that might be a little premature because we're adding a second vehicle this year from time to time as well, which is going to increase that line. And I think that notes, I had that as a question as well, and then I read the notes and followed it through and realized that that's what's happening. So I'm not sure whether it's a good idea to take it down that low.
Can we leave this with staff to bring back to us on Thursday with how they're going to put all the pieces that we've thrown at them together? Excuse me. Mr. Patrick, are you okay with that?
Through Madam Mayor, I am, but my internet just froze on me for a second, so you just might want to repeat what you just said. Sorry.
So we were talking about the reduction in the fuel line, but there was a comment about an additional vehicle, and so I was suggesting that staff maybe bring back, once we're finished all our discussion, bring back on Thursday options for how the various pieces can be funded or shifted.
Sure, absolutely. I'll put that on the list.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on this? Okay, we still have capital, correct? You want to do capital now or later?
Barry, do you have more to add on the capital budget?
I did not, unless there were additional questions that council had for clarifying or anything like that.
Councilor Shantz?
Thank you. It's just a point of interest. These tough tablets, what are they?
So the tough tablets, these are ruggedized tablets, rugged devices for outside workers. So currently, the operations staff through Public Works has 6 Panasonic Tough Books, or Tough Pads, I guess they call them because they're tablets, that they use out in the field. So they are environmentally protected as well as shock and drop protected. And so what that allows them to do is access certain files internally here so that they can do their job more efficiently. So there is an ask from the Infrastructure Services Department to add additional tablets for their staff there. Right now, the majority of the staff that are using it are on the water side. They're looking for additional tablets for the roads crew as well. RCS is also requesting tablets for their staff so they can do similar tasks on their side of what they're responsible for.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I'm wondering if we do council and committee next and then take a break, and then we'll move back to CAO and finance, and I think then we will have taken care of everything. Mr. Petter, do you want to start with council and committee then? I'm just going to throw everybody off and mess everybody up.
No worries. So through you, Madam Mayor, so essentially this is your budget. This is under the, every budget is under control of council committee, but this one is specifically within your control. As you can see, the budget is fairly static from year to year. There's not too many changes in it. For me, I think some of the discussions that council may want to have is still around the potential training development. I know we didn't spend a lot last year because of COVID. I'm not so sure what we can expect to see in 2021, but it may be up for council's discussion. I think other than that, as I said, everything is pretty static from 2020. And if council sees fit to make some changes, I think we're open to that.
Okay, council? Councilor McMillan.
If Councillor Merlehan wanted our $2,500 grant increase to come on the back of council, I could support that. So reducing the training and development by $2,500, I'd be in favor of that if we wanted to do that.
Councilor Merlehan.
Wrong button. Through you to Councillor McMillan. I was looking at the meeting expenses at $6,000 this past year. We're meeting on Zoom. We're only accruing $1,000. I'm guessing for at least the next 6 months, we'll probably be meeting this way. So taking money from there or wherever to give to the grants, I would support that.
Anyone else? What typically goes into the meeting expenses? Is that mileage primarily, or?
That's the, Mayor Shantz, that's the usually council, any expenses for these meetings, so the food, supplies, what else would be in there?
That's it.
Yeah, so it could be reduced.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we okay with taking the $2,500 out of our meeting? This Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, just the meeting's a bit of a wild card. We don't know what the second half of next year is going to look like. Things look really bad right now. But if the vaccination goes as the federal government says that it should, and the provincial government's able to deliver, it might change. So I think the training and development is something that we have under our control, whereas the meeting expenses is maybe a little bit more of a wild card. Maybe we split the difference, do 1,500 out of one and 1,000 out of the other, but I would be on board with whatever we decide.
Okay. Councilor Merlehan?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I would suggest cutting both those line items, just cutting them. I can't, nobody's going to Roma, nobody's going to AMO. We only used 600 this past year, $10,000. I don't know what training is out there, but we could probably cut that in half and and the meeting expenses, even if we took 2,000 out of that, I can't see us using it if we're, I know I did the calculator for when I'm going to get my vaccination, and it's near the end of July. So we'll see.
5 and 2 makes a lot of sense to me.
Sorry, I missed that. Councillor McMillan?
5 and 2, 5 out of the training and development and 2 out of meeting makes a lot of sense to me.
Training, I am attending Roma, but of course it's all virtual, as will AIM will be, so the expenses are much less. So there was a suggestion to take 2 out of meeting expenses and 5 out of training. I see a thumbs up, I see a thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, sure. Thank you. Anything else on council and committee? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and come back and finish up. 7:20-ish. Okay, thank you. Can we reconvene, please? See who we've got. Waiting for, there's Councillor Shawns, Councillor McMillan, and Councillor Redcott. Here we go. All right, all present and accounted for. Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Brennan, you can finally have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. So I certainly am not going to go over to start the key messages and overview and outlook that I provided to council. Actually, sorry, can you just not share the screen quite yet, please? Just have some opening remarks. I was going to say that I'm not going to go over the key messages and overview and outlook that I certainly tagged on the end of Richard's presentation the other night. But before getting into the CAO's budget, I did want to take this opportunity to, reflect on the fact that, it was a year ago. None of us could have predicted exactly where we would have been following our budget process, because it was shortly thereafter that we got into managing the reality of a pandemic. And it's certainly been an extremely extraordinary year for all of us. And, I think one of the things I reflected on as I was preparing for tonight was the fact that what I'm most proud of the fact is being part of an organization that I feel managed through this pandemic very well. And, that is to thank certainly council for your leadership over the past year. Certainly the residents and businesses have you to thank for your governance and your leadership as we managed through very extraordinary times. But I'm also appreciative to lead a strong senior management team. But beyond that, as well, managers and frontline staff that certainly managed very effectively through very extraordinary times. This has to be one of the most difficult years and challenging years I'm sure anyone that has worked in the public sector, working for a municipality, has had to go through. Especially in some of our areas, that have gone through openings and closing, especially in our rec area, but right across the organization. It's been an extraordinary year to manage, and things are not over yet. And we continue to be concerned and offer the resources up to remind our staff that we're here to support them through this, because there is still a concern about people's mental health and emotional well-being. On a personal note, I used to always tell people that the most challenging year of my life was 1998, when I worked for Brant County and we were going through a restructuring into a single tier municipality. And I was working for my lower tier job in the municipality, and also working for the new Brant Transition Board. But I would have to say this past year has been the most challenging year because of the emotional roller coaster I know that it has been, for all of our team and managing through that. But I am very proud, as I said, of being part of this organization. As I said, not just council's role in your leadership and your support, but the senior management, our managers, and our frontline staff. It's just been extremely incredible. I also don't want to mention something I talked about earlier this year, and that is there have been some silver linings or positives that I hope will come out, will continue to come out the other side of this pandemic. And chiefly that involves the level of collaboration across this region, between the region, the cities, and the townships. It's been my pleasure on a in a professional role to be part of the regional pandemic control group, to be part of the municipal control group. And it's even been equally, if not more of a pleasure, to be part of a group that we created out of the 4 townships and all of our community support agencies as part of our rural recovery group. We have an extraordinary amount of talent, not just with our municipal sector across the townships, but within the likes of our community support agencies, such as Woolwich Community Services, Community Care Concepts, Woolwich Community Health Center, Wilmot Resource Center, Cambridge North Dumfries Health Center, It's just been incredible to actually work and collaborate with those folks. And I can see positive results coming out the other side in terms of how government has to continue to work with the not-for-profit sector to leverage our resources and our funding to solve some of the most important community issues that exist out there, whether that be in the area of affordable housing, sustainable food, environmental issues, transit, whatever the issue. I can see great level of collaboration coming out the other side. But certainly, certainly with those challenges, as I said, have come opportunities. And I see those opportunities being able to continue. And I think a sign ultimately of how we can lead as an organization is where we look at the hard times and the challenges and are able to find the opportunities that will come out of that. As I also reflect on the past year, I think as an organization, we've been able to grow and find out what we're truly made of in terms of the ability to respond when our residents and businesses most need us. There are things such as we're doing tonight. Web streaming was always something that was on the list of we would like to do it, but there was always reasons that other priorities came up. But you know what? When we really put the rubber to the road, it's amazing what we can do in terms of the research and coming up with new and innovative practices, when forced to and when push comes to shove. As well, I saw it with the patio expansions, how quickly we were able to turn things around like that. So I hope and firmly believe that when we come out the other side, we will be stronger as an organization for having gone through this. So with that, I will get into the first slide, please. Thank you. Next one. So as a result of the reorganization that we went through, if you recall, the CAO's office really, it was felt needed to have the direct reports of simply the senior management team. However, one of the things that evolved, and I think both myself and Ms. MacArthur would say it's a good thing, is we decided to keep emergency management out of the CAO's office to allow Recreation and Community Services to evolve with the oversight for fire. And there might be a future phased, implementation down the road with respect to emergency management. But I firmly believe everything happens for a reason in life. And I think it was the right call to make sure that emergency management stayed within the CAO's office, considering the leadership and administration that's been required with respect to the pandemic. This next slide, please. And while that is the only true division that's left within the CAO's office, still the CAO's office is responsible for oversight of a number of areas. It's still the CAO's office's job to make sure that we're leading the strategic plan development processes, whether we do new strategic plans or we do updates. And obviously, when we're developing the annual corporate business plan to execute on the strategic plan as part of the budget process, it's certainly the CAO's office to work with the department heads to be able to execute on that. I mentioned emergency management. In as much as human resources, certainly in council was supportive of the reorg and human resources falling under corporate services. You'll recall there was an agreement that when it came to labor relations, it still was important, and ultimately collective bargaining and negotiations, that it was the CAO's job to maintain that leadership with respect to that area. And finally, overall leadership and general management of the corporation is certainly the overall administrative responsibility. Next slide, please. So as a result of the reorg, certainly the CAO's budget became much more streamlined. I think it was about a page and a quarter that you would have had to review. And there's really two key areas to talk with you about this evening. One, because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that the CAO's office provides oversight for emergency management. I believe also Richard pointed this out in his initial presentation, that the way we're tracking COVID-related expenditures and then also provincial Safe Restart funding to help support that, is through the CAO's office, specifically in the area of emergency management. So you would have seen within the budget funding that was outlined for COVID and managing there, and that was flagged as one of the comments. The other thing that is noted is the potential for a phase 2 of a joint service delivery review with the other townships and the use of modernization funding. I do wish to acknowledge, and I do appreciate, council, that we have not completed phase 1. All of the councils in turn then have not been able to make an assessment as to whether they feel phase 1 was a success and wish to go into a phase 2. But at this time, I would respectfully ask, as the other townships have done as well, that we put a placeholder because modernization funding is available, and a decision can be made following the results of the phase 1 and a future report even on going with phase 2. But now I believe it's an important placeholder for the potential of that project and the use of the modernization funding. However, certainly it's up to council how you wish to proceed, but that is something I wanted to acknowledge and point out to you. Lastly, I would like to continue on with the dialogue we started, I believe, on opening night about possibly doing a new strategic plan. I would note that evening, Councillor Merlehan talked about some of the commentary that Doug Griffiths has provided to us about how perhaps strategic plans should look, or how they should look, and how they should be messaged in terms of short and sweet, I think, messaging. I'm certainly open, and I'm always open to new and creative and innovative ways to be able to develop a strategic plan. But I can tell members of council, I am still in support of the need for some document in the flavor of a strategic plan, because without a strategic plan, you don't have a vision for the organization, and you don't have a firm understanding of where your priority areas should be. Even from an overarching look at our current strategic plan, one could tell that what's important to us is growth management, infrastructure renewal, building and maintaining healthy communities, overall good governance and fiscal responsibility. So I believe you need an overarching document to be able to guide the municipality, because ultimately, if you don't have something that's developed from a high level, you run the risk of developing business plans on the fly based on not having a vision and understanding of what's important, not just to the organization, the council and the senior staff and that are involved, but the community as well. So certainly this evening, I would like some indication from council as to whether there would be interest in developing, in staff coming back, myself coming back with a report on a strategic plan process. And I would certainly welcome any input council would like to provide this evening as to what they would like to see considered and evaluated and brought back as part of that report. Next, please. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions and look forward to any discussion regarding the strategic plan, council.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, not a question, but there was a question put to us, so I'll provide an answer. How do we feel about the strategic plan? I think it's an interesting subject, because a strategic plan can be a coaster. It can be not worth the paper that it's written on, or it can be an incredibly important document that guides your entire organization. Councilor Merlehan referenced Doug Griffiths. You would not have to go far through the business section of a library or an independent, hopefully, bookstore to find business consultants that talk to you about the wasted time in strategic plans that get put in a drawer and never touched again. But they can also be an incredibly powerful document. And there's two things that dictate whether or not it's going to be worthwhile or it's going to be a coaster. And it's how you gather input at the start. Do people in the community feel like their voice is represented in that document? Does council feel like their voice is represented in that document? Does staff feel like their voice is represented in that document? If important shareholder stakeholders are represented in the document, it's easy to get buy-in. And then it comes down to the people who are responsible for decision-making every day and at the highest level, which is staff and our council, to live up to that strategic plan. I've been on a board before. I started at the school board. We had a strategic plan. It was 10 pages long and nobody knew what was in it and nobody looked at it, and it mattered not at all to our organization. And we did a strategic plan review. We created a new one. The process was fantastic. And then our staff lived that document. My final 2 years on the board, we had a strategic plan that drove our organization. Graduation rates went up, test scores went up, achievement across the board increased, and that strategic plan, while not specifically talking about test scores, drove the values that ended up leading to that increased achievement. I worked at Sun Life. We had a strategic plan. I'm sure I had no idea what was in it. Never saw it. I'm at Manulife now, and we have our core values that we live every single day. And the difference is not in the quality of the strategic plan. It's in the process that creates it, and then the values that guide you after it's created. So I understand the hesitation. There are lots of consultants in the public sector and the private sector that will tell you the pitfalls that exist in creating a strategic plan. But just because other people haven't done it right doesn't mean that we can't, and it can be an incredibly important document for the council.
We do have a strategic plan, and I know that staff use it regularly. Mr. Brandon, did you want to speak to that at all? Or?
No, I mean, other than to say, yeah, I mean, I think we demonstrate that the strategic plan is executed on. We identify how we're doing that through the business plan, and we identify, how we're doing in terms of making accomplishments throughout the quarterly reporting. So, I mean, it does exist, but I mean, I want to really stop talking and see where council wants to go with the notion of a strategic plan. And if there's support for developing a strategic plan, what sort of input would you like to provide, in terms of a report that we could provide back, in terms of how you would like it shaped, and the flavor for the process, that sort of thing.
So David's request is really question, I guess, is does he have support to bring back a staff report about a process for a strategic plan, and we could debate the merits of it at that time?
Yes and no, Mayor, in the sense of I still want to know, if council, as Councillor Merlehan, I think, was trying to get the debate going last time, if it was, what type of strategic plan document or what type of document would it look like? So I don't want to be able to just go away and write a staff report without some initial discussion from council tonight on, one, do they support the need for a strategic plan process? And two, what do they feel that should be shaped like? Councillor Merlehan stated last week, and I hope or the other week, that I hope I have this right, that conceivably we could develop a strategic plan document that was about a page or so, and it just simply reflected from a very high level the things that are most important to us and the things that we want to be most known for, and that's what ultimately would shape the ultimate business plan actions that we're looking to move on. Those actions would reflect the areas that we want to be most known for. I believe I have that. Hopefully, Patrick. If not, I'm sure you can correct me, sir.
Okay, Councillor And I think you did have your hand up, and then Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, through you, just general comments on the subject. Councillor McMillan had lots of good points about the strategic plan, and I agree with him on, it's the amount of, it's how you capture the input that is probably the most important aspect of your plan going forward. And I guess my criticism of our strategic plan in the past, and I would also put this criticism onto the consultants that we've had in the past, is that the input from the public. I mean, it would be wonderful if we could get over 50% of people that would come and tell us, what is it that you want, and that you would have this overwhelming support for some sort of direction on every decision. But for the most part, as we know, we get very little input. And when you go to stakeholders, it's pretty predictable what the stakeholders are going to say if they're in community services or they're in seniors or whatever. And so you're basically going to get their input, and then that's going to be automatically part of the strategic plan. So I guess the input aspect of what's driving us to do these things that in the next 10 years that we want to achieve is coming from very few people in the township. And I don't know how to change that to get more input. It's been very, very difficult over the years. But for the most part, our strategic plan, I've gone through it a bunch of times. I think there's way too much in it. It could be definitely pared down, and even every report that comes back that says, "Oh, here's how it," goes back to the strategic plan. I'm not sure that's necessary, but I think if we all came up with some sort of shorter thing, and when I was talking last time about this, I was telling you Doug Griffith's perspective rather than my own. I'm kind of in between on that. I have seen his one-page strategic plans, and at that point I almost just, why bother doing it at all? But there can be some sort of happy medium in there that captures the spirit of where we want to go, and that that motivates staff and council to find that direction. I don't know if that helps.
Councillor McMillan, did anybody else have their hand up? Councillor Shantz, you go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't quite talk the way that Councillor McMillan can talk. I really liked his comments. I guess my concern is hiring consultants, and it seems like it's almost cookie cutter before we even get involved in it. And that's kind of the way I felt about the org review that we had. It almost felt like it was figured out first before we even had a chance to talk, and almost had to drag them back when I wanted to have my discussion. So I would hope there would be some more input and open mindedness, I guess, rather than it almost seemed like the assumptions were already laid out before we even had a chance to have the org review. So I guess that I don't want to see us go through that process that way.
Okay, go ahead, David.
So just to be clear, we've never used consultants for the strategic plan. It's always been staff led. We've never paid $1 for consultants for the strat plan process. And we haven't budgeted for that either. We envision continuing on with a process that would be developed, with council input, and then certainly staff led, as supported and directed by council.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yeah, it's too bad. When we did it at the school board, we had a consultant that was fantastic. Kind of, was there to facilitate and let the process play out and was able to bring in input from different people. But I understand the concern that, I think we saw one consultant report that was brought to us that had the wrong, they'd forgotten to do the copy and replace or the find and replace, and it still had the other town's name where it should have had Woolwich. I understand the concern. I wonder is there a chance, our strategic plan at the school board ended up with 3 strategic priorities, and each of them had 3 bullets on it. It was short and it was memorable, and that's what allows us to be guided by something, because it's not, maybe there was a larger document behind that supported that, but I don't think so. I think it was 3 strategic priorities, and then there were 3 bullets on each one. And so you had 9 things that were guiding the organization, and it really was effective. I agree. If it's a binder full, it's going to get lost in the noise. I wonder if there's an opportunity to reach out to other municipalities and see, do they have a strategic plan that they feel works for them? And if they do, if they are a municipality that's, close to our size and they have a strategic plan that works, what can we learn from them about their process? Or if they have a strategic plan that, we haven't looked at it in 2 weeks or 2 years, then maybe we don't want to follow their process. Is there an opportunity for us to seek out people that, embrace their strategic plan and find out what worked for them?
Yeah, sure. Certainly.
Is that enough feedback on the strat plan?
Yeah, no, I think I'm hearing consensus so far around the fact that, I guess, bottom line, a pared down, simpler, straightforward, with, really some key areas to focus in on. And then ultimately, those areas can help drive the development of the business plan going forward. And ultimately, it's no doubt easier to understand when council's really probably trying to frame, does its decisions, the decisions that they're making, fit within really what you approved? I think probably a simpler pared down document would even help with that. The only thing I would note is that there's definitely always challenges, with the strategic plan process. And I've seen that not just in terms of running some community engagement sessions, but over the years with, different councils. Sometimes it's very hard to get members of council up to the strategic level. There's a propensity, to talk about, well, I think we need to have more signs, around the community, or, something of that nature. In order to have this pared down document, we really have to get up to a level to understand, what are the key areas of focus that we want to look at? What truly is the vision? And that's what I think will ultimately be important, is that we get everybody on the same page with that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Redekop?
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion, David, through you, Mayor. What was I going to say? I would like to hear some feedback during the process of developing a new strategic plan about how this one has worked for you as staff. I think you mentioned about four of the values that we want to be about in the township. I think you were quoting from the strategic plan, and I would appreciate sort of some reflection on did they work? Did they work well? And maybe we only need to tweak it, because if those values were important to the community before, I would think they are still important to the community.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McMillan, I'd like to move on to the budget piece soon, but go ahead.
I was just wondering if AML had any resources that they would be able to provide municipalities looking to do this kind of thing.
I mean, I think they would, Councillor McMillan, but I think in fairness, your other suggestion about reaching out to my colleagues in other jurisdictions is probably a better source for best practices.
Okay. Are there questions on the budget? No. Councilor Mohan?
Yeah, through you to Mr. Brenneman, can you just give us an update on the phase 2 aspect of the township partnerships KPMG study?
Sorry, just to clarify, Councilor Merlehan, on the phase 1 or just want to give you a better sense on the phase 2?
I guess on both, just where we're at. The last that we had that group meeting by Zoom, and that's the last I heard of it. So if you can tell me what the plan is going forward, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pleased to do so. So with respect to the phase 1 final report, an implementation plan report is being developed by the CAOs. KPMG has filed the final report with us, and we're meeting to review, similar to what we did with the org review, develop a report for all of the 4 township councils on the implementation plan. That will be coming forward towards the end of February, it's expected. There's still a few discussions that we're having, for example, with the region on the library component. So that's taking a bit of time at the tail end of the process, but that should be done shortly. With respect to phase 2, the reason that phase 2 is being recommended as a placeholder is because initially, when we council may recall, a number of you, when we brought forward the report on doing a phase 1, said, not sure it goes far enough. There's other areas in terms of recreation or some of our other departments, even with respect to public works, where there probably is areas of partnership and collaboration that may make fiscal sense. And so it's about exploring those other areas that we talked about, when many of the councils, including some on this council, felt phase 1 didn't go far enough. But we wanted, if you recall, to scope the first one to make it manageable, to make it achievable. But there were certainly other areas to Councilor Merlehan that seemed to be potential areas of interest. But I, for one, meant what I said earlier. I would like to see what this council feels coming out of phase 1. In terms of the recommendations. Do you see value in doing a phase 2? As I said, there were suggestions coming out or before we started phase 1 that there should be other areas that we explore, such as rec, such as public works, and see what the opportunities are for efficiencies and partnerships, collaboration. But ultimately, I do appreciate that I'm sure council will evaluate whether we should in fact do that phase 2 based on the results of phase 1, as I said, which should be before you by the end of February.
Councilor Mohan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up, so you mentioned that the CAOs are working on an implementation plan. To me, that sounds like we're committed to this all the way. Is that?
No.
No.
No, it's a recommendation report on a potential implementation plan. Yeah, no, nothing's a done deal. It's recommendations to council to either support or not support.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll move over to Mr. Patrick to finish us off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation similar to everybody else's that you've seen so far. So I'll get Alex to put that up. So I'm just going to give you guys some really high level of what I'm looking at for financial services in 2021. Just a way of background. So for my area, I have 3 major sections: the management and budget, accounting and revenue. So next slide. And so with that, from financial services, just as it says, we are a service provider. That's really what we do in our department. And we really have 2 big stakeholders. One, we service our internal customers, so that is yourself as council as well as staff and departments. And we also service external parties, and that would be our citizens and other organizations or businesses. And we do that through the variety of services that are listed within this slide. So next slide. So kind of going over some of the major things. First, looking at management and budget. So the biggest thing that you're going to see within my budget is really on the revenue side. We're going to have about a decrease of about 38,000 is what we're projecting in the budget from 2020 to 2021 in our interest income. You may recall that through the quarterly reports, I was talking about the fact that with the overnight rate reduction that the Bank of Canada did, it had a pretty big impact on our interest income. So one of the things to look at, particularly in my budget, looking at that interest income line, you will see even in the budget right now, the actual is only sitting just close to 150,000. There are a number of year-end adjustments that would be being made, so we'll be pretty close to what we'll probably see as the 2021 budget sitting at 232,000. The other one I gave a bit of I alluded to it in my opening back a week ago, and that is with the decrease in expected one-earth hydro dividends. We're expecting a decrease of about $75,000, so you'll see that reflected in the budget. And just as I said on the first night, I think this is an opportunity that we can have as council and township. I know there's been areas of discussion on being able to take some of the one-earth hydro dividend and putting it in other places. This may be a good opportunity, knowing that we're going to see the $75,000 reduction in 2021, that we may want to look at maybe putting 2021 as our base hold at the very least, and then anything that we may achieve in future years in 2022 going forward, we may achieve greater than what we have currently in the 2021 budget. We can for sure shift that over into different reserve funds based on council's desire. Also, just a piece of additional information in my minor capital. I still have 2 projects that are on the go. Unfortunately, with COVID, they just had to be put on hold. One, I guess, a little bit to do with COVID, and the other one is more so with the development charges. There was many iterations of development charges updates, and this particularly within the Development Charges Act. So we have an opportunity. One of the things that happened is that they will be getting rid of the 10% statutory deduction for especially our soft services like our studies, stuff with recreation and our parks. So in order for us to be able to recapture some of that development charges, we have to go through a development charge amendment. So I actually have that built in the budget to do that. And the majority of that funding is coming from development charges. And as I said, one of the other things that we had to put on hold in 2020 due to COVID was the remapping of our general ledger project. And this is for us as part of our modernization, and that is where the funding is going to be coming from. So there'll be no levy impact from that. So next slide. So kind of jumping over the accounting section, because there's really not much to talk about in that area. Just going into the revenue side. Once again, from I guess revenue division and the revenue side, you'll see that the increase in supplemental taxation, I've done about 30,000. We had 190,000 in last year's budget. You saw that we achieved that. We achieved that greatly, which is nice. But also just budgeting about 220,000. I'm comfortable with 220 based on what I can see that is coming out. I know what we've seen historically. We've always been even above the 220,000. I don't necessarily always look at what we historically did. I always look at the forward thinking about what I think MPAC is going to be picking up for us. So that's really what I'm looking at. And I can see about 220,000, definitely the MPAC is going to be able to pick up for us. If council wants to push that a little bit further and increase that budget line, I'd say that's council's prerogative. But for now, 220,000 is what I'm recommending and what I'm comfortable with. As part of some of the additional information, I think one of the things I wanted to highlight to council is with our tax write-offs. You will see that we had a $70,000 budget in 2020. We had about $150,000 in expenses. still budgeting for $70,000 in 2021. That's typically where we end up, and typically our taxation write-offs or the likes of vacancy, well, actually not vacancy rebates and where it used to be, but charitable rebates, you know, some of the requests for reconsiderations that came in. Those are the types of things that we generally see in this account. So I think one of the things that the changes that have been made to the Assessment Act is that they were really pushing on the assessment review board to clean up a lot of their old cases. They had a huge backlog of cases right across the province. So for me, just my own anecdotal, I would say that through COVID, I think they actually got to a lot of the backlog. The good news is that I think they are through the majority of Woolwich's backlog. The bad news is it's all happened for us in 2020, which is why we see an expenditure of about $150,000. And some of these cases were going back 5 and 6 years. So the good news is it's cleaned up now. So going forward, I'm still really comfortable with the budget of $70,000 for 2021. I can also say just a bit of anecdotal on that one as well we only saw 150,000. We usually take in the smaller share of the taxation. Don't even want to think about what the region's tax write-off for Woolwich look like. So with that, just next slide, and it's just asking if council has any questions on my budget.
Questions? Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know how to tell you where this is, but it's about 4 pages in, and it's the insurance claims. And that really jumped this year, and wondering if you can explain what that is all about.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just trying to think about how I'm going to say this without having to go in the closed. Council may recall we had a closed discussion about a spill that occurred within Woolwich. And that really is what is driving that number.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, I apologize. My internet froze a little bit. I heard Mr. Petherick say that 220,000 is what he feels comfortable with if that's council's direction. And I didn't catch what you were referencing with what you felt comfortable with.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that is with the supplemental taxes. So that is on the last page of the financial budget. And so that's under the revenue division. And so we had 190,000 in the 2020 budget. We saw about 311,000. But as I said, you know, I'm always looking at it from a go forward perspective. And from what I can see talking with MPAC representatives, 220 is quite achievable. And that's what I'm comfortable with. But as I said, if council wants to stretch that even further, because we do have growth within our municipality, everything always comes to when does MPAC pick it up and when do we actually see that supplemental tax revenue? That's always my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ronan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Petherick. Just on the supplemental tax, so you're comfortable at 220. What happens if we said, no, make it like 320? What is the outcome of that?
Where's your level of tolerance? I think is the question.
So to you, Madam Mayor, well, I serve at the leisure of council, so whatever council would like, I'll be totally comfortable with. I would say that if we ended up shifting it up to 320,000 and we only ended up seeing 220,000, we are short $100,000, which means somewhere along the lines, we're hoping either somebody garnered more revenue elsewhere or they actually had a decrease in expenditures elsewhere. If not, we're going to end ourselves up in a deficit position at the end of the year.
Okay, but as far as the budget, if we said, oh, we think we're going to get more revenue, would that make taxes go down, or does that do anything?
Yeah, so right now, if we were to add money into this budget area, it does make the tax rate go down. So it does require less levy overall.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councillor McMillan?
I don't need an answer to this now, but we've talked about it a few times, and it's an appropriate time for me to ask, but I certainly don't need an answer right now. We've talked about our operating contingency, and what is an appropriate level to have for that. And I think, we've addressed, in my first year in council, I think we did a pretty good job addressing the line by line built-in contingency. But I wonder if now we're in a position where, do we have enough wiggle room there? An operating contingency, we've just found out, can be vital. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned from COVID, and that is we need to have the ability to ride out a short-term storm. And I just wonder if now would be a time that Mr. Petherick wants to talk about the operating contingency. Where is it? Where do we feel comfortable with it? Where should it go? Any comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think it's Appendix G in the budget package, the budget report. I think that is the reserve and reserve fund projections. So at the end of 2021, I'm expecting the operating contingency to be around $270,000 as a remaining balance. That's what I anticipated to look like. There are a couple of pieces that are in there. So I would say I'm trying to recall what would be available for the true contingencies, probably, low 200, at least 200,000. I think from this reserve, I believe the target for us is probably in around $1 million is where our target should be. So we are severely underfunded from that. But once again, we always get into the aspect of trying to balance the what do we have the reserve for? Do we have too much reserves? How are we getting to that balance? Are we taxing people just so we can square money away just in case? Because usually we try to fund these things from our surpluses. For the past number of years, we haven't had those surpluses, which is always what has started to cause me a bit of concern because we've been drawing upon that. Hopefully we'll put ourselves in a position post-COVID that we may be a little bit into a surplus. And I think that's where we've been fortunate in previous years when our supplemental taxes have come in greater than we anticipated. It has helped replenish some of this reserve. But as I said, right now, we're probably 20% about where we should be in that reserve.
Okay. Councilor Rohan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Richard again. If we could chat about the projected growth, we have some long-term growth happening in the township, presumably for the next 20 odd years that we're kind of at the start of. This past year for the assessment growth was just under 3%. What are we anticipating that to be when more of these subdivisions come online? Is there any kind of projection that you're seeing when, I know we have this slow growth policy, so that'll come into it, but just whatever projections you have for the next, say, 5 years.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I don't typically project out there because I think really it's not the residents. I think the residential development is the one that's actually more consistent. It's when we get into the commercial development that really is what drives our swings. So as a good example, for us to achieve 2.6 going into 2021, that was because we ended up picking up a couple of commercial developments late in 2020. And we weren't really, I think we were sitting at about 1.5% in around the October time period is where we were sitting at. And then we ended up getting this push from a commercial development that came on stream. So once again, we're still at the mercy of the timing of when these properties do get picked up. But it goes to show you how volatile it can be when we're dealing with commercial developments. Because I think the residential is the one so coming up with 1.5 to 2% per year is probably quite achievable given our residential growth. It's when we get into these commercial ones is where the swings start to happen.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Richard. Can you just refresh my memory of the grants in lieu line? We had 350,000 budgeted for that and didn't get anything. And then now we've got 350,000 in it again. Can you bring me up to speed on that one?
Yeah, sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. So that is properties that don't fall under the, I would say, the normal taxation. So they're kind of like payments in lieu. They do pay taxes, but it's just a different mechanism of how they pay taxes. And part of the big chunk of this dollars is what happens, some of the properties in, I mean, since we're a shareholder, I would say the Water North Hydro Administration building would fall into this category. So the biggest thing is that the school board portion of the taxes, we actually get to keep. So that's what really funds into this. It's really a lot of those types of portions, those things we end up being able to keep, and we don't pass it on. So while it doesn't show as the actual right now, it's occurred, it's usually a year-end adjustment.
Anyone else? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just to double back on this contingency thing, I had to think about it. I think we really need to have a conversation as a council about this at some point. I think one of the concerns, and I think it's a legitimate one and a really good one, is we don't want to have line items where we're budgeting in extra money and we end up with a contingency reserve that we end up spending on projects that we maybe don't have the political will to pass spending on through the levy. But by having no reserve, we're putting ourselves in a really precarious spot. So I think there needs to be a balance there where we're generating revenue for our contingency reserve, but then also having a clear outline of what that contingency reserve can be spent on, so that we're not, creating pet projects that it's easier to spend the money out of the contingency reserve rather than off the levy because that's politically expedient. But I think we really need to think about this coming through what we just came through and knowing that, the likelihood of a pandemic is higher next year than it was 2 years ago. The likelihood of natural disasters is higher than it was, last year. I think for us to not have an operating contingency is irresponsible. So I understand the concern, but I think we need to have that conversation about, funding that contingency reserve and then balancing that with what that money gets spent on.
That sounds like part of our discussion next Thursday. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. And Mr. Brown and Ms. Hummel and Mr. Smith. It's been a good evening. I think we're done for this evening, so I would entertain a motion that Committee of the Whole rise and report to Council. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Monahan. All those in favor? That's carried. Motion that Council confirms and adopts the proceedings of Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That's carried. Unless there's something I've missed, going once, Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, I don't know. This year I found the budget bouncing around quite a bit and hard to follow. And so I wonder if I can just kind of backtrack a little bit and ask Mr. Poupet a question, and I don't need an answer tonight. But I had a note on it and I missed it when we were doing the infrastructure. And so I finally found it. It took about 45 minutes because it wasn't an actual number. And my question is about Menno Street or whatever and resurfacing. What are we doing there and how recent was that done?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz. So we did do Menno Street in 2020. And that was Conestoga Meats obligations. So we just funneled that through our program. And what we're proposing to do in 2021 is just to finish off Meadow Street from where we ended this year to all the way to Shawn Station. And that would complete that roadway.
And would that be hard top or back to the tar and chip?
No, that is to be, I believe that is to be a hot mix, but we can certainly, I can define that answer on Thursday.
Okay, because I thought we had just done some work on that road, and I was just down it the other day, and it's not in bad shape, I didn't think. So I was questioning that because Hopewell Creek Road is still a disaster. And so I was just wondering why that one was coming to the top compared to something else. And I think at the time when we were doing that one, I thought I had suggested we should be putting regular pavement down there because of the heavy truck traffic. So anyway, I don't need an answer tonight, but I just wanted to circle back on that. Thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Okay, I was just going to make a comment. David in his presentation said we've just come through a year that nobody could have projected it was going to be like that. A year like we've never seen before. Hopefully, after 2021 is through, we'll never see this again. But I'd just like to say that thank you to David and all the senior staff for guiding this ship through the rough waters and keeping us afloat. I think you've done just a terrific job, and I'd like to say thank you.
Agreed.
Thanks to all the team. We've got an incredible organization.
Before we adjourn, I should just double back to Mr. Petherick and get him to maybe summarize what we've got in case we've missed anything.
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. So some of the changes that we made tonight, we added $2,500 to grants. We took out about $5,000 from the council training and development. We removed $2,000 from the council meeting expense. So while we started with 1.5%, we're now down to 1.46. So that's kind of where we stand right now. We still have to come back to council next Thursday to start talking about traffic calming. As well, just still some of the discussions, I think some of the discussions to be had about whether we want to have some money dedicated for COVID relief, whether we, I think we also said that we would come back when we talk in the first quarter about subsidies for minor sports. We talked about, even tonight, we talked about potentially having staff look at the enforcement fuel. And I think Council Merlihan still brought up the whether council wanted to look at travel assistance grants and maybe have a small reduction in that for 2021. So those are the things. And then tonight's operating contingency discussion as well is also what I have note of.
Thank you. Council, anything that has been missed? Okay, well, we'll look forward to our discussion on Thursday night. Can I have a motion that we adjourn to meet again in special session on Thursday, January 14th, 2021? Moved by Councillor Shawn, seconded by Councillor Merlihan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So thank you to everyone who tuned in this evening on your YouTube live stream. Council members, I'll just remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And say good night, everyone, and I will see you on Thursday.